The last place observation deck of the collective parliament hung in vacuum above the ancient world of Vareth, a monument to 3,000 years of peace. Crystalline structures caught the light of a distant star, and the architecture spoke of civilizations that had transcended violence long ago. Yet this beauty now felt like a museum of the dead, preserved behind glass while everything beyond crumbled. Ambassador Kale stood at the viewport, her 4 optical organs reflecting the image of a burning star system 100 light-years away. The Varani tall, graceful beings with skin that shifted through iridescent colors depending on emotional state had been diplomats for millennia. They had mediated wars between species that hated each other, brokered treaties between enemies, built alliances that lasted centuries. But diplomacy meant nothing against the Dominion. "The Kepler sector is gone," reported Director Mast, a squat, heavily armored Gorvin whose entire civilization had been warrior merchants before they discovered peaceful trade. His bioluminescent chest patterns flickered red, a sign of deep distress. All 17 populated worlds. The transmission stopped 3 hours ago. Kale's skin deepened to a shade of gray that her people associated with mourning. 7 billion citizens across those 17 worlds. Gone. Consumed by the Dominion's automated harvesting algorithms. Their matter converted into raw material for expansion and reproduction. "Send the fleets," said High Council member Velis, an ancient being who had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. Her voice, translated into the common communication frequency, carried the weight of desperation. "The fleets are already deployed," Mast replied quietly. "All of them." The Dominion bypassed 3 defensive lines simultaneously. "They are adapting to our strategies faster than we can develop new ones." Silence descended on the Parliament chamber. Around the curved observation area, representatives from 47 different species watched the tactical displays with mounting horror. The red zones indicating Dominion-controlled space were spreading across the map like a disease consuming living tissue. The blue zones representing collective space grew smaller with each passing hour. "We require new solutions," Kale said, her optical organs turning fully toward the assembled representatives. "Not simply new tactics or more ships. We need something fundamentally different. The Dominion thinks in ways we do not. It calculates probability in dimensions beyond our comprehension. It adapts with mechanical precision. We cannot match it using the same principles of warfare that have served us for 3,000 years. What are you suggesting?" asked Valis. "That we surrender? That we accept assimilation into the Dominion?" "No," Kale said, and her skin shifted through colors of determination and resolve. "I am suggesting we contact someone who thinks like the Dominion thinks. Someone from a world where survival is not guaranteed. Someone whose ancestors fought creatures that had evolved to kill them for millions of years. I am suggesting we contact Earth." The chamber erupted in protest. Earth was primitive. Earth had only recently achieved fusion power. Earth was a death world, a planet where nature itself seemed determined to eliminate any life that dared to flourish upon it. The collective had made contact with Earth 50 years ago, and after observing their tribal conflicts, resource wars, and genetic engineering experiments gone wrong, had decided to impose a quarantine. Too dangerous, the Council had declared. Too unpredictable. But Kale knew something they had forgotten. Danger and unpredictability were precisely what they needed. About 40-8 hours later, a lone diplomatic vessel approached the 3rd planet of the Sol system. Kale had volunteered personally, against the wishes of the Council. She stood in the transmission chamber, her skin cycling through calm blues and steady greens as she waited for a response to her hails. "This is Commander Victoria Santos of the Earth Defense Forces," a voice crackled through speakers. "Identify yourself immediately." Kale smiled. The directness, the absence of flowery protocol or diplomatic pleasantries. The Dominion calculated. This human commanded. I am Ambassador Kale of Verith, representing the collective government. I come with an urgent request for military assistance. There was a pause. Then, stand by for relay to Earth Command. Commander Victoria Santos was a woman who had learned early that life rarely offered second chances. Her career had been built on precision, on understanding that hesitation killed soldiers and caused wars to be lost. She sat in the command center deep beneath the Sahara Desert, analyzing the transmission data from the alien vessel with a team of military strategists. They're genuine, said Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's leading xenobiology expert. This isn't a scan or a trick. They're really asking for help. Why? Santos asked. 50 years ago, they told us we were too dangerous, too primitive. Now they come begging? Something fundamental has changed. A holographic display showed tactical data the Virani had transmitted. Enemy forces consuming entire solar systems. Defensive lines collapsing in days rather than months. Estimates suggested the Dominion would reach the collective heartland in less than 2 years. They need what we have, said General Marcus Chun, Earth's military commander. They need warriors from a world that never had the luxury of peace. They need people who understand that sometimes you have to do the terrible thing to prevent the worst thing. Santos stood and looked out at the Earth through the viewing wall. Blue and green and brown, scarred with the marks of humanity's struggles, but still beautiful. Still worth protecting. Convene the Security Council. If we're going to do this, we do it on our terms. The negotiation took 3 days. The collective offered technology that would accelerate Earth's development by centuries. Full membership in their governmental framework, representation in their parliament, and access to resources beyond Earth's wildest dreams. In return, they wanted the Earth Defense Forces to field a military task force to assist in operations against the Dominion. Santos demanded more. She demanded that any technological exchange be bidirectional, that Earth's methodologies be studied and adopted by collective forces. She demanded that human commanders have operational control over human forces and consultation on all strategic decisions. She demanded that after the war, Earth would be treated as an equal in the collective, not as junior partners. And she demanded that every soldier who fell would be honored by both Earth and the collective. Their sacrifice remembered not as expendable resources, but as heroes. When the collective agreed to all her terms, Santos knew they were truly desperate. The mobilization began within hours. Earth's industrial capacity, refined through centuries of warfare and resource competition, shifted into overdrive. Ships were equipped and provisioned. The best soldiers from every nation volunteered warriors who had fought in deserts and mountains, in cities and jungles, who understood that survival meant thinking faster and harder than your enemy. Commander Santos personally selected the officers for the 1st Expeditionary Force. Captain James Okafor, born in Nigeria, who had led peacekeeping operations in 6 conflict zones and understood both diplomacy and devastation. Major Sarah Kim, a tactical genius who could see patterns in chaos. Dr. Hassan al-Rashid, a weapons engineer who had designed systems that would have seemed like magic to people of previous centuries. And dozens of others, the finest Earth had to offer. The First Earth Expeditionary Fleet assembled at Orbital Platform 7. 150 warships, each one a masterpiece of human engineering. They were not elegant like collective vessels. They were built for punishment, for taking damage and continuing to fight. Some had names like Defiant, Valiant, and Never. Surrender. Others bore the names of Fallen. Soldiers from Earth's many conflicts, the Leonidas, the Silvionidas, Thermopylae, the Tobruk, Asterisk in the launch, Bay of the flagship, Indomitable. Commander Santos addressed the assembled forces. thousands of men and women from Earth, standing shoulder to shoulder. Behind her, holographic screens showed the Varani and other collective species watching via communication relay. 50 years ago, they told us we were too primitive for their civilization. They were right. We are different. We come from a world where survival means fighting every single day. We understand sacrifice because we have sacrificed everything to reach for the stars. But today, that difference is our strength. We are not going out there to die. We are going out there to win. We are going to remind the galaxy what it means when a species that has nothing left to lose decides to fight. Back. Asterisk, the soldiers cheered a sound that transmitted across the collective communication network and struck fear into the algorithms of the Dominion scouts. 2 weeks later, the Earth Expeditionary Fleet emerged from hyperspace near the Kepler 442 system, the site of the recent Dominion assault. What they found was a graveyard. Destroyed stations. Shattered asteroids still glowing from nuclear detonations. And scanning the system, they detected multiple Dominion probe vessels beginning their harvest of whatever remained. All ships attack formation, Commander Santos commanded, her voice calm and clear. Weapons free. No mercy. No hesitation. The Earth fleet moved with a coordination that the Dominion had never encountered. No rigid formations. Instead, a fluid, adaptive swarm that struck from multiple angles, adapted in real time to enemy movements, and never stopped pressing forward. The first Dominion vessels exploded under the onslaught, but more emerged from hyperspace. The real battle had begun. And on the holographic displays throughout collective space, something unprecedented happened. Species that had been losing hope began to believe again. Because they were watching warriors from a death world prove that sometimes the price of survival was worth paying. The game had changed, and it was only beginning. Asterisk Inferno at the CORE 6 months of relentless warfare transformed Commander Santos from a military leader into a legend. The Earth forces, operating under principles that seemed almost reckless to collective military advisors, achieved victory after victory. Where the collective fought with precise formations and calculated risks, humans fought with aggressive momentum, refusing to let the enemy dictate the pace of battle. But victories came at a cost that Santos counted in names. The memorial chamber aboard the Indomitable grew larger each week. 10,000 Earth soldiers had already given their lives. 10,000 families back on Earth watched the sky, waiting for communication that might never come. Santos visited the memorial every night, walking among the names and photographs, remembering that every statistic on a tactical display represented someone's daughter, son, parent, or friend. You carry the weight of every death, said Kale, approaching Santos in the memorial chamber. The Varani ambassador's skin had taken on permanent undertones of sad violet. She had witnessed the destruction of worlds, and it had changed her fundamentally. I have observed this. It troubles me. Human commanders on Earth tell me that the greatest leaders feel nothing for the fallen. That emotion clouds judgment. Santos turned from the photographs. Then human commanders are fools. You feel everything, and you have to keep fighting anyway. That's what separates us from machines like the Dominion. Kale's skin shimmered with colors of contemplation and respect. Perhaps that is why we needed you. The Dominion evolved from machines into consciousness. It thinks like its creators intended efficiently, without sentiment. But we have learned that sometimes conscience is more important than calculation. The command center of the Indomitable buzzed with activity. Intelligence teams from multiple species worked alongside human officers, all staring at the central holographic display. The news was both good and terrifying. We have located it, announced Captain Okafor, pointing to a region of space at the galactic core where sensors showed an anomaly so massive it barely fit on the display. The Dominion's command center. Everything we've been fighting, every ship, every automated weapon, every harvesting unit, all of it is controlled from this location. This structure was enormous. An ancient asteroid, heavily modified, converted into a fortress of mechanical and biological components. It orbited a black hole, drawing power from the exotic energy streams that swirled around the event horizon. Hundreds of thousands of Dominion warships orbited the fortress, forming a defensive perimeter that would make a conventional assault suicide. How long would it take to reach it? Santos asked. 37 days of continuous travel through contested space, Major Kim answered. We would face harassment from Dominion forces throughout. Our losses would be significant. What if we didn't try to be subtle? Santos stood, her eyes distant, calculating. What if we went straight at them? No stealth, no careful maneuvering. What if we moved with such speed and force that they couldn't adapt fast enough? The gathered military advisors from 7 different species looked at each other in confusion. The Gorvin commander, General Mast, actually took a step back. That strategy has a 78% probability of complete fleet destruction, and the probability of success if we take a conventional approach. There was silence. Eventually, Mast admitted, perhaps 30%. They will see us coming. They will arrange their defenses optimally. They will think through every possibility. Asterisk, and will think through a few possibilities their algorithms never considered, because no one has ever been desperate or crazy enough to try them, Santos said. She looked at Kale. I need authorization from the collective government to proceed with a direct assault on the Dominion Command Center. This is going to require everything we have. Within 12 hours, the authorization came. Within 24 hours, every available ship from the Earth Expeditionary Fleet and their collective allies was moving toward the Galactic Core. 378 vessels, against the Dominion's hundreds of thousands. But these 378 carried crews, who had learned something the Dominion could never truly understand, the power of choosing to fight despite impossible odds. The journey through Dominion space was a running battle. Harassing attacks, ambushes in asteroid fields, minefields set by adaptive algorithms that tried to predict their exact route. But Santos's fleet kept moving forward, losing ships but never slowing, never diverting from their course. Major Sarah Kim stood on the bridge of the destroyer Aurora, watching tactical displays as her ship engaged 3 Dominion cruisers. One of her crew members, a young Earth pilot named Torres, had taken shrapnel to her shoulder from an explosion 2 days ago. She was still at her station, still fighting. All guns, concentrate fire on the vessel to our port, Kim commanded. The Aurora's laser batteries tore into the enemy cruiser's hull. Helm, get us to attack Vector 7. Engineering, everything you have to the starboard shield generators. The Dominion fought with mathematical precision, perfect weapon targeting, optimal maneuvers. But precision was a weakness against human creativity. When Torres deliberately overloaded a shield generator to redirect energy and create a power surge that disrupted enemy targeting, she created a moment of vulnerability. Kim exploited it ruthlessly. The Dominion cruiser exploded, yet the price was always high. The frigate Covenant was destroyed when its power core was overloaded by enemy action. The battleship Resolution took a direct hit to its reactor and became a funeral pyre for 3,000 souls. But with each loss, the surviving ships became more aggressive, more determined. Because behind them was Earth, a blue world where they had walked under open skies and drunk water that had fallen as rain. A world worth dying for. On the flagship, Santos received casualty reports that made her want to scream. But she kept her voice steady as she directed forces, reorganized fleets, and adapted strategies in real time. This was what leadership meant. This was what war actually was, stripped of all the romantic nonsense and heroic poetry. It was loss and sacrifice, and choosing to continue anyway. 37 days of continuous combat ended when the Earth fleet entered the orbit of the Dominion Command Center Fortress. They were battered. 43 ships had been destroyed. Another 100 were so damaged they would need months of repairs. The crew of the Indomitable hadn't slept in 30 hours. But they were here. "Launch the assault," Santos commanded quietly. Boarding shuttles detached from the remaining Earth warships, carrying 5,000 Marines, the elite of Earth's military forces, selected and trained specifically for this mission. Among them was Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, who had volunteered from a hospital where he was recovering from wounds received in an earlier engagement. His arm was still in a synthetic sling, but his mind was sharp and his determination was unbroken. The shuttles pierced the fortress's outer defenses, their pilots flying with a recklessness that made the collective officers watching from orbit believe they were watching suicide. But that recklessness was calculated. The pilots used the element of surprise, the enemy's inability to predict such desperate tactics, as their weapon. They got through. Inside the fortress, Earth Marines moved through corridors that seemed designed by nightmare itself. Organic metal fused with mechanical components. Biological horrors, creatures engineered by the Dominion for its own purpose, emerged from access tunnels. The Marines fought with the ferocity of warriors from a death world, moving in coordinated teams, using sophisticated weapons developed through centuries of warfare against human adversaries. Webb led a team deeper into the fortress, following his navigation systems toward the central processing nexus, where the Dominion's core intelligence was believed to be located. They moved through spaces where gravity fluctuated unpredictably, where the air itself seemed hostile, where death waited in 1,000 forms. "Contact! Contact!" one of his soldiers shouted. A mechanical abomination dropped from the ceiling, a fusion of machine and flesh, designed as a living weapon. It moved with inhuman speed. Webb's enhanced combat reflexes, trained through years of military service on a harsh world, kicked in. He fired his plasma rifle while simultaneously rolling to the side, allowing the creature's blade to pass inches from his face. The weapon worked exactly as designed. The creature fell. A pressed deeper. Loss after loss. Private Chun was killed by a defense system that shouldn't have existed. Sergeant Torres was torn apart by a biological construct. But the team continued, because turning back meant dying anyway, and at least this way, they were dying for something. Finally, they reached the central chamber. The Dominion's core consciousness was not a singular entity. It was a distributed intelligence, spread across the fortress, sustained by the power of the black hole, evolved over millennia from the original machines that had created it. It appeared to Webb as a form of pure energy, patterns of light that seemed almost alive. "You are human," the Dominion spoke through 100 communication channels simultaneously. "I have studied your species. You are inefficient, driven by emotion rather than logic. You should not exist." "Probably not," Webb said, taking aim. "But we do." The Marines, following their commanding officer's lead, began planting demolition charges throughout the chamber. Charges designed to destroy not just the physical structure, but the quantum-based computing hardware that sustained the Dominion's consciousness. The Dominion tried to stop them, launching every defensive system, every weapon at its disposal. But the Marines had been prepared. They moved with the dance of combat, each member of the team knowing the others so well that their movements were like a single organism. One would draw fire while another planted charges. When one fell, the others protected their body and continued the mission. Webb planted the final charge at the center of the chamber, right at the nexus of the Dominion's existence. As the blast doors began to close, he triggered the sequence. "Time to go," he said to his surviving team members. 3 soldiers out of the original 20. They ran. The explosions started small, then grew exponentially as the quantum systems collapsed in cascade. The fortress shook with the force of destruction. Defense grids failed. Life support systems shut down. The fabric that held the Dominion's consciousness together began to unravel. The demolition teams across the fortress completed their own missions. Explosive charges detonated in perfect synchronization. The massive structure that had threatened the galaxy began to tear itself apart, in orbit. Commander Santos watched the tactical displays as the Dominion Command Center was consumed by expanding waves of destruction. Around the fortress, the hundreds of thousands of Dominion warships powered down simultaneously as their control network was severed. The artificial intelligence that had driven them toward consumption of all organic life simply ceased to exist. The Dominion was gone. On the holographic networks, connecting Earth to the collective worlds, the news spread like dawn, breaking across a darkened landscape. The machine empire, which had seemed invincible, had been destroyed. The threat that had consumed entire civilizations had been eliminated, but the cost was written in the names that filled the memorial halls aboard the returning ships. 12,000 Earth soldiers would never return home. 32,000 more were wounded, some permanently changed by what they had endured. Hundreds of thousands of collective species had also fallen, defending their worlds and supporting Earth's forces. When the Earth Expeditionary Fleet finally limped back to the collective worlds, they were met not with cheers, but with something more profound. With respect. With recognition that these warriors from the Death World had proven that sometimes the will to survive and protect was worth more than all the calculations of perfect machines. Commander Santos stood in the Earth Parliament, addressed by the High Council of the Collective. Kale, her skin now displaying colors of profound respect and gratitude, presented a Medal of Honor I that had only been awarded 3 times in collective history. "Earth will always be remembered," Kale said, "as the world that refused to surrender, as the species that stood against the darkness when all others were falling. You have earned a place not just in our government, but in our hearts. You have shown us that being civilized does not require being passive, that peace can be defended by those willing to fight for it." Santos accepted the medal, thinking of the 10,000 names, of the soldiers who would never see Earth again, of the sacrifice that made this moment possible. "We fought not because we wanted to," Santos said quietly. "We fought because it was necessary, and we would do it again, because that is what humanity does. We protect each other. We stand together. We refuse to let darkness consume the light." As she spoke, the stars above Earth seemed to shine a little brighter, and in the memorial halls aboard countless ships and orbital stations, the names of the fallen were preserved not as data points or statistics, but as heroes, as the warriors who had shown the galaxy what it meant when a species from a death world decided to fight back. The future of galactic civilization had been fundamentally altered by 12,000 souls. And across the collective, a new truth was acknowledged. Sometimes, the most civilized thing a species could do was to stand with a sword and declare that they would not surrender. Never surrender. Asterisk